From Bristol, Mike Greenberg here, and delighted you are there. Thank you for choosing to get up with us, and thank you to all of you, the medical professionals, the first responders, and everybody else who are working so hard and under extraordinary conditions to keep the rest of us safe and healthy. Our show is for you. Our job is to keep you entertained for the next 2 hours, so let's get right to it. We start with Get Up and Go, and it begins in the NFL, where Von Miller has tested positive for COVID-19. The Broncos released a statement saying he's doing well, he's recovering at home, he's in self-isolation. He will be a guest on NFL Live today at 2 p.m. Eastern. Elsewhere, congratulations to Mike Conley of the Jazz. He is the winner of the first ever NBA Horse Challenge. He beat Chauncey Billups in the semis and then took down Zach LaVine in the finals, so he is our champion. Jalen Green is the #1 prospect in the 2020 draft class. He is bypassing college. He's enrolling in the NBA's new G League Professional Pathway program. This is potentially a very important and interesting story, and we're going to delve into it with Woj and Jalen in about 15 minutes. And college football, the USC quarterback JT Daniels has entered his name in the transfer portal. He's a 4-star ESPN 300 prospect from 2018. He suffered a season-ending knee injury in USC's season opener last year. Meanwhile, top story, 6 days now till the NFL draft, and the Dolphins have the 5th pick. They've been seen all along as a likely landing spot for Tua Tagovailoa. Their general manager, Chris Greer, was asked yesterday about the challenge of weighing talent versus injury risk.
You always weigh the talent. You talk about the kid, the person, the work ethic, and then you do look at the injuries. You take into factor the position he plays and such. So for us, every decision is got to be weighed with that. But again, you just never know. But for us, we factor in all that stuff, but we'll make a good decision for us in terms of what we think is best for the Dolphins.
All right, and Laura's with us bright and early here. So, Laura, we've been talking about this for what feels like a long time, but every single day it seems to change. What are you hearing right now regarding the Dolphins and Tua?
Well, you heard Chris Greer there, and look, Greeny, they're not going to tip their hand one way or the other. Lately, there's starting to be a little bit more rumblings of the fact that they might like Justin Herbert a little bit more. That being solely because they are one of these teams that doesn't like to take risks. And you see some teams that are more risk averse than others. But then you have to sift through all of this and say that it could be a smokescreen at the end of the day. The Dolphins maybe really liking Tua and wanting to make sure that some other team doesn't trade up ahead of them at that 3 spot to try and get him, and that they could then, of course, just have him at the 5th pick. And so I think through all of it, what you do know is that the Dolphins like Tua. There are a lot of teams that like Tua. They are one of them. And they are one that through this process has asked a ton of questions, especially medically, about Tua Tagovailoa. They, of course, received that video that he sent out, his pro day video that was sent out to a bunch of different teams around the league that was received very positively. But once again, if they do, in fact, take Justin Herbert, and let's say that Tua falls to that 6th spot with the LA Chargers, that could also be a really nice landing spot for him. Tua Tagovailoa, who, of course, is in a scenario where he's from, closer to that West Coast side of the country, and that could be a good spot for him. Tua, right now, back in Alabama at home, just waiting to see exactly what happens with all of this, and really feeling like he has done as much as he possibly could do at this point to be wide open with everything going on with him and to be very transparent about what he's been through from an injury perspective in his career.
Absolutely. And look, the circumstances are things he can't do anything about in this pandemic, but they are unquestionably a factor in this. Laura, stay close. Let me bring in Mike Tannenbaum is with us this morning along with Dan and Marcus. It's great to see all of you guys. And Mr. T, I've not seen you in a while, so let's put you in that chair. On draft night, you have the 5th pick in this draft, and Tua is still available. Are you turning in a card with his name?
No way, not in the top 10. I can't, Greeny. Not with this injury this year. This is a very complicated injury. You want to have your own doctors, your own experts examine the hip. You want to see strength of how strong the hip is. You want to see range of motion. And when you look at what the top 5, top 10 in guaranteed money last year, Devin White had approximately $30 million in guaranteed. When you get to halfway in the first round, 16, where Brian Burns was, that money goes about half. So unless you could actually examine the player, I've dealt with this injury a lot over the last couple of years. It's complicated. Let's hope Tua has a great career, but no way am I taking him in the top 10.
How much does that have to do with how much you like the other quarterback, assuming that you feel you need to come out of this draft with a quarterback? How much of this is dependent on your personal opinion of Justin Herbert, which in your case, I know you're a big fan?
Absolutely. I think Justin Herbert's a really good quarterback. You can win a lot of games with him for a long time. When you go down the last half of the season with Utah, Wisconsin, he played very well. Goes to the Senior Bowl. He's the MVP of the game, performs very well at the Combine. So I think this is a guy you can win a lot of games with and be really happy with. And again, I think Tua has a chance to be a good player, but everything has to go right for Tua. He needs a good offensive line. He doesn't have the athleticism that Justin Herbert doesn't have. And more importantly, you can't check every box this year with Tua. It's that fundamental. There's rigor in the process, and without having the full process, you can't make a complete decision. You could go win with Justin Herbert, and at the end of the day, if you're a steward of a franchise in the top 10 and you need a quarterback, Justin Herbert's the better pick this year.
All right, Dan, you're itching to get in. I can see it in your face. Go.
I mean, this is why we love Mike T, and this is probably why he's such a great dad, because he's looking at this responsibly. But you're not buying a car for your 16-year-old daughter, right? You're not trying to protect something. You're in an arms race in the NFL, and there's 31 other teams that you're competing against. And Greeny, yesterday I'm watching your show, and I'm watching First Take, and it's the Michael Jordan expert with Jerry Reinsdorf, and they're talking about that injury that he was dealing with early on in his career, and Michael goes, everyone's looking at the negative of this situation, and I'm trying to find the positive. And that's the way I think the general managers need to look at this. And I'm glad that The Last Dance comes out Sunday night, because Chris Grier and Tom Telesco and these general managers that have these picks early in the draft are going to have to be willing to go and find the positive when it comes to Tua, and not the negative. And the reality is, you can't just go about this with the mindset of, I've got to be responsible. You've got to go in there with the mindset of, I got to be willing to take a risk, because the teams in the NFL that traded up for Patrick Mahomes and Carson Wentz and Deshaun Watson and Jared Goff, those teams were willing to try and go be really good to great. And like, I really believe that those teams that are trying to revamp their franchises have to be willing to look at the positives of Tua rather than kind of being weighed down by those negatives.
I get it, Dan. And look, for every example that you just gave of a time that worked, I can give you one where it didn't work. So it isn't necessarily about that. It's about Tua, at least in some part, versus Herbert. And Mike T doesn't have them all that far apart. Some others don't either. Dan, in your mind, is there a chasm between Tagovailoa and Herbert?
It's enormous. It's enormous, the difference between the two players. Everything that is paramount playing quarterback really well in the NFL, Tua has. Anticipation, throwing people open, how to use your eyes, pinpoint accuracy, suddenness and instincts in the pocket. Tua does really, really, really well. It's really the foundation of him as a player. And all those things that I just mentioned, those are the weakness in Justin Herbert's game. He doesn't anticipate as a thrower. He's got average accuracy. He's got poor instincts in the pocket. He doesn't use his eyes. They're actually a weakness of his. So the difference of the players is enormous when it comes to just their talent.
All right, Swagoo, I'm going to make this a court. Each of them have made their case, and you're the judge. Which way do you rule after this conversation?
Tua Tagovailoa. I'm not wavering on that. Listen, we know Justin Herbert had first-round talent, first-round potential. We talked about it last year. But quite frankly, if you having to compare the two at quarterback, minus the injury that Tua had, I'm with Dan. It's not even close. It's like the analogy Dan used. You can take Sam Bowie and get a really good player, or you can take Jordan and possibly get one of the best to ever do it, and in Jordan's case, the best to ever do it. That's what I'm weighing here. I'm looking at a Miami Dolphins organization that already missed this opportunity years ago with Nick Saban as the head coach. And honestly, man, when you think about everything that's transpired leading up to this draft, we know what point we're at. I'm with Mike T on that. We know that now is the negativity, the scrutiny, saying what guys can't do, saying that guys can't be healthy. But you can get caught in that house with Justin Herbert and Tua in somebody else's house, and it's bigger, nicer, and real nice things, and they study bringing in paychecks, and Justin Herbert, just another Tannehill situation that you have in Miami. I would draft Tua, no doubt, no question. And I know the medical, and I would still take him, G, because he's that much better as a quarterback.
All right, Mike Tannenbaum, I'll give you the last word. Go.
Yeah, I think there's a time and a place to take a risk. As a general manager, I traded for Brett Favre. I traded up all the way to the top of the first round for Mark Sanchez. Enormous risk. There's a time and a place to take risks. My point is, because of a complex medical situation, without your experts, this isn't the time or place to take these transformational risks, which I agree, guys. We need to chase greatness. We need to chase championships. This is not the time to do it.
All right, the decision will get made in 6 days. You're going to see it live on ESPN. We'll continue talking about it as we go. And we're just getting started this morning as we get up with you. LeBron James jumped right from high school to the NBA. That may become a new trend in a different way. You're going to hear all about it. It might be the end of college basketball as we know it, and I'm not overstating it. Then Cam Newton still out there as a free agent. One player has made a pitch. You'll hear who and why next. Get up with ESPN.